From 23dB Production Studios in the Garden State, New Jersey, this is The Art of Music Tech with your hosts, Fela and Denis.
Let's go, and welcome back to the Art of Music Tech podcast. I'm your host, Fela, and over there is Dennis.
Hi, everybody.
All right.
We have a guest today, right?
Yes. In our home studio in New Jersey, we have one Frank David Greene. Say hello, Frank.
How are you all doing?
How you doing, Frank?
I'm good, buddy. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for candies.
All right. Yes.
They're really good,
yes.
right?
Watermelon. Yeah.
Good start doing this one
good,
now.
good icebreakers. Yeah. Icebreaker watermelon.
Uh-oh, commercial for icebreakers.
I know, right? I'm going to tell you a little bit about Frank while he's here, make him blush a little. Frank David Greene is a California native and most notably lead trumpet for the CBS Orchestra for the late night show with David Letterman. Frank also spent 5 years playing lead trumpet, recording and touring with Maynard Ferguson on Broadway. He's worked with Roy Hargrove, and I know him from Christian McBride. We were recently on a tour in Europe with him. And most recently, Frank wrote a new book that's on Amazon and Kindle. It's called I Knew That, 116 Thoughts That You Already Know That Will Change Your Life. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
All right, man. For me and Frank, we've had some great discussions about success and how to go about it.
Over 85 cups of coffee.
Oh my goodness, the coffees we've been through. Yes. But it's a subject even me and Dennis, we talk about all the time. Like, what's the next move? How do we move further in what we do in audio and be able to help out other people and get that help in return? I mean, it always comes back when you help out somebody. It's never a bad thing to help. And I just recently read this book, Frank, and holy cow, I love it.
Thank you.
I read part of it too.
You guys are so good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so we just want to dig a little bit into your background. We know you're from California, and your father has quite a legacy as well. So
Yeah, my dad is a tech guy, actually. And he got his degree in engineering, and he taught at Stanford University, he taught at Santa Clara University. And then the last years of his life, he was doing a venture capital, and his focus was on women-owned companies and to try to give them a leg up in ways that, that was not really possible for them at the time. So he was he was really into trying to see if he could make a difference in that regard.
Yeah. I stumbled across was it the Academy? Well, there's something in his name. I'm sorry, on Facebook that I came across.
Well, there's a thing called the Green Scholars. That was designed to help young electronic students to get some chances and some opportunities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really good. It's still going now.
Yeah.
And two great women are behind that program right now. So.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be his son. And I think of it that way, as corny as that might sound. But.
Yeah. And how about your mom?
My mom was a homemaker. My mom passed when I was 21. And ironically, I didn't finish college because I went on Woody Herman. You know Woody Herman, the jazz and the Thundering Herd. It was a big band of the Buddy Rich, Stan Kenton era of bands. And so my mom passed away, and 4 months later, I got pulled out of school to join the Woody Herman band. And so she never really got to even see me do anything, just but be a college punk. Okay. So, but she was a homemaker. But she passed away from cancer when I was 21. She was 47. So it's been a while.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
None of us are getting out of here alive.
Oh yes. But it's up to us to make stuff happen, and with the time we have. Yeah.
I hear you.
So starting from there at 21, I mean, you didn't even finish school. So that
there are a lot of college dropouts that I know they're doing pretty well. Yeah.
Oh, many. Mark Zuckerberg and all. Yeah, we've chatted extensively about that too. So you get out of school and you start touring
Yeah, right away. Yep, went straight into the road at 21, and got a lot of the guys that I was on that band with. I'm still friends to this day. A lot of them live in New York, so it's pretty cool to have known those guys and been in that fraternity of people for so long.
Oh, okay. So where did that next gig take you after the big band?
Ironically, I did that for a year, and then I wanted to finish my degree, so I went back to school, and just as I was about to go back, I got a call to work at Walt Disney World of all places, and so they actually wrote me a check and put me up in a hotel so I could find an apartment. So I thought, man, this is pretty cool. So I'll
You're
do
21.
this. I'm 22 at this point.
22. Okay.
And so I called, but then just as I was driving from my car from the Bay Area through Texas to visit some friends on my way to Orlando, I get a call from the guy that runs the program at North Texas State where I went to college. And he says, don't go to Walt Disney World because the Count Basie Orchestra wants you to play lead trumpet with them. And so now I'm kind of freaking out. I'm 22, and these opportunities are happening. And so I called John Faddis. I don't know if any of the people know John Faddis. He's quite a distinguished musician in his own way. Yeah. And so John gave me talk about mentors. John gave me some advice. And so, he said was you could play the best music in the world, or you could spend your day saying, have a nice day, have a nice day. And so, but the difference is I had already cashed the check, and I already committed to doing the job. So I just followed through. And the guy that wound up doing it stayed on the band. He's still leading the band. So it worked out good. But
yeah.
I was thankful to have John because he did put it in perspective. And so he made that move to Orlando much easier.
Yeah.
And then I think I was there for 5 years. I think every 5 years I do something different, I think. And then I wanted to do Ships. Back in those days, Ships had big bands. They had 5 trumpets and 5 trombones and 5 saxophones and 4 trumpets and 4 bones and 4 saxes. And we were playing shows like Ben Vereen and people like that on a ship. I mean, those don't exist like that anymore. And we played, Lou Rawls and people like that were coming out. So I did that for a while. And then after I pretty much traveled the entire planet, I got off the ship and moved to New York. I did a year of a Broadway tour. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to New York, and I've been here for about 20 years. So
why
it goes by fast.
Why the move to New York?
It's ironic. The ship we were on from France over to New York to sail down to Miami had the engine was blown halfway through, which made for a great crossing for us. But and so we were parked in New York for about 10 days while they fixed the engine. So I got to really walk around and see everybody, and I ran into my friend Marcus Printup, who's a jazz trumpet player that plays with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Band. Uh-huh. And we were talking a bit about New York, and he said, bro, you should move to New York. I'm like, I don't want to live in New York. And he showed me around a bit, and by the time I was back on the ship and we sailed back to Miami, I was back in New York. I left the ship and went on and rode with a Broadway tour to see if I'd even like doing Broadway. And then I was back here a year later, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, wow.
Do you still like it?
New York?
Yeah.
Sometimes I fell off my skateboard today, so I'm not loving that part very much. But
well, you can blame that on New Jersey, but we'll take it. To keep you on the East Coast.
Yeah, right. I'll take it. Yeah, I like
natively a West Coast guy, but
I still like New York. Yeah.
Oh man. So you hit New York.
Really hard on the ground this morning.
Hard. Yeah. You hit New York hard, and this is when you were 24 too, as well. You had to hit it hard, and
no, it was much later. I think I moved to New York when I was 36 years old.
Oh,
because
okay.
I spent those other years, between. And that's right in the middle. I missed the whole part, and then the other 5 years of that time was after I did Chips. I went on Maynard Ferguson's band, and so. Between those two, and so I did Maynard's band for 5 years. I keep forgetting about that part because it's just like I can't believe I got to do it. But
wow.
And I guess I recorded two records with Maynard while I was out. So it's been fun. I can't complain about anything.
Maynard,
he was
Rocky,
my hero when I was a kid. Yeah,
Rocky. Any kid that's seen Rocky, you've got to. You've heard Maynard Ferguson.
To sit next to your hero and your childhood hero is like you're like a 5-year-old every day. So.
Wow. Yeah. You play pretty high. You're known for your higher notes, and
I'm a lead player. Is what you're supposed to do.
you go after it, and you're known as one of the best around. Well, what was that training? Getting your armature and like how, even as a engineer, it fascinates me how the different levels of this and how it all comes together as a band of just like, oh man, and it just sounds so cohesive, but Man, not everybody can do that. Definitely, that
Well,
you know what you're doing is.
Well, one of the things I know people sometimes call it, you're a lead player. They say you have to kind of make sure you're ready for the ta-da notes at the end, of the song. You have to save a little extra in the tank for the ta-da, at the end, right? Well, a lot of songs have a ta-da at the end.
Yeah.
And so when I was in college, I went to high school with 6 trumpet players, right? And I was one of the 6, where if you practice at all, for even 5 minutes, you're already better than pretty much everyone at the school, right? And so I went to North Texas State, which I think is called UNT now. And I looked on the sign-up sheet. There were 187 trumpet players auditioning for the big bands there. And they had 13 bands. But what I quickly discovered was if you didn't play in the number 1 band called the 1 o'clock, then the guest artists and people like that, no one ever heard you. Anyone coming into the school to kind of recruit or kind of sort of recruit or maybe to see, who's doing what. If you weren't in that number 1 band, like I met Marvin Stamm and John Faddis and all those people from touring with the 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. If you weren't in that band, no one heard you. And so it was really hard to make a way for yourself if you weren't in that band. And so also with trumpet, you either play classical trumpet, back then you either play classical trumpet, you play jazz trumpet, or you play lead trumpet. Because if you don't kind of fall into one of those 3 categories, people can't know how to hire you. They need to, like we talked about before, people have to know how to buy you, where to look for you in the grocery store of life, right? Mm-hmm. And so, if you don't have a predominant space at the grocery store on the lead trumpet player aisle, then it's hard for people to buy you. And so luckily, that was my focus, is to get into the best grocery store,
top shelf.
on the top shelf of the lead trumpet player aisle in the supermarket of life, And so
fantastic.
That's what was my focus, is to try to get into the 1 o'clock. And so as it turns out, I was the first African American lead player in the 1 o'clock of all the years that they were there. So that was a nice feeling to know that part. But.
Well, I would like to, for listeners, not for us, but for you to explain what it means when you're when in your 20s, right, or in your teens, when you're trying to get on that shelf. How much time you have to spend on training, getting better, and figuring out.
Oh well, I'm sort of blessed because a few teachers have told me that I'm probably the most pragmatic musician they've ever worked with, and sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. But we talked about that a little bit about being a bit pragmatic, because to me, I'm not really concerned with, I don't have these little side rules. I'm here and I want to be over there, and so it's like what makes that the easiest way for me to do that, and if I have to practice a certain thing or do a certain thing, but I want to find people that know what they're talking about. And so I pretty much just ignored all my peers, because I figured for the handful of information that they might give me that's correct, they're going to give me probably a whole bunch that's based on a guess. And so I pretty much ignored my peers and only went to people that I could talk to that were proven, that I could see they're proven to know what they're talking about. And so I was lucky enough to have a really good practice room next door neighbor. He was a virtuoso classical player, trumpet player. And so I basically figured out whenever he was there, I was there practicing, because I figured, hey, I get a daily dose of what this is supposed to sound like. I'll probably never get there, but at least I get a daily dose of what really good is supposed to sound like. I don't have to guess anymore. I'm hearing it right here firsthand next to me. And so, and I can tell you this right now. My friend Dan Smith and I, we're really good friends now, and he gave me this coin when we were in the military. Oh, he's out in Fort Myer right now. He gave me this coin when we met. That
I'd like to see it.
It's like an appreciation of service coin from because now he's out there and he's a pretty big muckety muck out there in Fort Myer. But Dan Smith, and I said to Dan, even if you had tried to shake me by moving to a different practice room, I would have just followed you. So you weren't going to ever get rid of me. So I'm just whenever you practice, and if you moved and just started practicing in your apartment, I just would practice next to you in your apartment. So it's that that just desire to I didn't really care if he told me that I sucked. I was just going to keep practicing, Uh-huh. And I wanted to make sure that I had the best influences around me. So I figured that'd be the best free way to get from here to playing lead in the 1 o'clock.
So learning from the master was.
Yeah, and just forming relationships with these people, and sometimes it's like he saw it as a level of respect that I respected him so much that I was going to just practice when he practiced, so I could hear what good sounded like. And to this day, he talks about
you would wake up 6 a.m. in the morning and start practicing.
Have several times, especially when I was younger. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Wow. So now that takes us back to New York, and arriving there. What were your first few gigs when you got here, or did you kind of work the scene more, or you kind of had something?
Well, I mean, I was a little older, and so I knew some people. I didn't move here
yeah,
when I
you
was
were
20.
30.
I was in my
Yeah.
30s, so I'd already
Okay.
played with Maynard, and I already toured and stuff like that. And I knew
Yeah.
a lot of my friends from Orlando lived in New York. But the crazy part is they didn't know I was here. I mean, this is before Facebook. This is really before
Oh, yeah.
I have
Social
a-
media.
I have a phone number that I had to pay extra money for because it had to be an easy to remember number. That's not even heard of anymore because the phones back when I first moved here were just these little brick phones that maybe ran for about 45 minutes. And you had to charge it again, and so they had no number, so you had to have an easy to remember number so people could call you. So you couldn't really broadcast you were in town because there was no Facebook. Remember that? This is 2000. This is 1999. So
Unless you just showed up to a bunch of clubs every night and did it.
no one even knew you were alive, right? So so the tricky thing was, just making sure people kind of knew that you were here. But the cool thing is that I had a few friends that were doing Broadway, but I was here about 10 days. And a friend of mine found out I was here, and so he made his trumpet player put me to the top of his sub list over in the dinner theater there up in Westchester Broadway Theater. I think that's what it's called. And so turns out this guy had a weekend gig at the Supper Club on 47th Street. And so he snuck in one day on a day out. He took off the show to hear me play his show, which a lot of guys I think kind of sneaky do. They want to hear how their subs sound.
Yeah.
So he said, "Man, do you want to come play in my group on the weekends? It's like a big band. You want to do that?" And I score. I'm in Newtown. You say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. You want me to mop your floor? Yeah, no problem. But so I wound up doing that, and in doing that, I met a bunch of guys that were playing with Frank Foster. We were playing with Clark Terry. We were playing all these other guys, and so they would go back and tell, "Hey, there's this new lead player in town that I want you to check out, see if you like him." And so before you know it, I'm like on all these. Do you want to hear the bands I was on?
Oh, please
Okay, I'll
do.
tell you.
Yes.
So I was playing lead. So then about within 8 months or so of being in town, I'm playing lead trumpet with Clark Terry. I'm playing lead trumpet with Frank Foster, who wrote all those great tunes for Count Basie.
Yeah.
I'm playing lead trumpet.
Clark Terry played was in the Carson band as well.
He was in that band. Yeah, he was supposed to be the leader of that band, but that's a whole long story.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it
yeah.
some other time.
Yeah.
But so I went up playing lead trumpet with the Dizzy Gillespie big band. I went up playing with John
Hometown
Faddis's
hero.
big band. Hey, right?
That's heavy.
I was in the Vanguard band, Vanguard Jazz Orchestra. I played with Bob Mintzer's band,
Yeah.
Maria Schneider's band. I went up playing lead trumpet with Nicholas Payton and with Christian McBride. So at one point I was playing lead. I was in 14 big bands of that type, and I was playing lead in all but 2 of them. I was playing split lead so for my first 8 years or so, it was just nuts because then I also had a Broadway show called The Producers. And that the Mel Brooks show, yeah. And so that show was doing really well. And so
This is the Matthew.
I was never at it with Matt. And so I
Yeah.
know Matthew very well. So I see Matthew sometimes in downtown. He lives not far from the Vanguard.
Wow.
But he and his wife. But
Yeah.
and so I would get in trouble because I'd never be at my show. I'd always be away. I mean, we would be in Europe, 4 months out of 5 months out of the year, doing things. So it was a fun time to be in. Those band leaders all get older. Clark passed away, and Frank Foster's passed away, and Roy Hargrove, and those guys are still around. But some of the other guys that you think about, like Maynard Ferguson has passed away. But playing lead trumpet in Slide Hampton's group and things like that. It was crazy. So it's fun.
What year did you get to New York?
I moved here in October of 99.
99.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
'Cause I remember it was like the big Y2K, the world's going to come to an end thing. Like just right after I moved here, everyone was freaked out. So
Oh yeah,
remember that
sure
Y2K
was.
thing?
Yeah.
Everyone
Oh,
was
my
like totally
goodness.
freaking out.
Yeah. It was like, what's gonna happen when it strikes?
Yeah, we're all going to
12?
be dead. Yeah, the world's going to explode.
Oh wow, yeah, those good days right there. 99, New York City. Wow. So that brings us to the 2000s. So what happens then? That's 8 years in. You're rocking with several bands.
Well, then, so we're on tour with the Dizzy Gillespie band, and we were in Beirut, and I was a little nervous. I didn't realize how nervous I was to be there, and so it was our second time there, and the first time I was a little nervous. I didn't realize how nervous I was because it's just sometimes things happen there that don't happen here. Well, hopefully never happen here.
Yeah.
And so we were supposed to go back the next year, but then they blew up the runway. There was a big war, and they blew up the runway 3 days before we're supposed to fly out. So we didn't go. So then we went again a few years later, and a couple years later, and everything was fine. But we stayed this time by the marina. It's really nice by the marina. But there's a building that had been blown up that was still blown up. They didn't even fix it yet. And so, we're like, look, the people here are so great. They have this issue sometimes. The people that we see are fantastic.
Yeah,
so we focus on that.
course.
So we played up in the ruins up there in Baalbek. And it's beautiful up there. It's the Roman ruins up there in Lebanon. But so my phone rings. And because I got an international, you have your you always want your phone, right?
Yeah.
So, and I get a call, and it's Paul Schaefer, and I get a call from his assistant, and the assistant says, "Please hold." So I held, and Paul says, "Hey, your phone rang kind of funny. Where are you?" And he said, "This is Paul Schaefer. Like I don't know who he is." Yeah. And I was like, "Who? Paul who?" And so because your phone rang kind of funny, he said, "Where are you?" I said, we're in Beirut. He went, "What the heck are you doing in Beirut?" And I said, "I've been asking myself that since we landed." And it really kind of broke the ice with us. We still kind of joke about that today to this day. But it was, kind of gave us a moment to kind of have a little laugh. But then he told me, "Hey, we're going to be auditioning for trumpets for the late night show, and we want to offer you a chance to audition for a week for the show." It's like all the auditions were 1 week long in theory in the time. So I stopped my knees from shaking, and I said, "Sure." I was trying to be all cool. Like this isn't a big deal. I get offered a TV show gig every day, and so we worked out the time, and then I went back and played the concert that night, and only one other person knew, and he said, "Man, considering what just happened, you were like pretty cool on the concert." But I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not cool, man. Trust me, not cool at all."
All right, so. Wow, take us through that process. A week long. I didn't realize that.
Audition. How was it?
How does that even? Yeah.
Yeah, here's what it is. This show, they don't really do retapings. And so if you kind of mess up, that's going to get on TV. And so it was a little bit nerve-wracking. But, a lot of it, when I first got there was some sight reading. And there was some, what kind of tunes do you know? And it was a lot of rapid-fire kind of things that, Paul is very able to think about many things all at the same time. He's almost a genius at that. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of music, which is pretty scary because he kind of thinks that maybe you're going to need to have one too. Which who has that? And so basically it's like, hey, sight read on TV, and try to figure stuff out on the fly while you're on TV. So I got through my first week and I thought, okay, maybe we're good. I have no idea. But, the saxophone player said, hey, the way they did the other audition was that they caught several guys in. And so they'll probably have you come back maybe in a month or two and maybe do another week. And they'll finally decide maybe after 6 months, right? So I was just happy to have the week, And I got along with all the guys in the band. And Felicia, it was great. Felicia Collins, she's great. Yeah. And Will Lee and Sid and Anton. I got along with everyone really well. And Tom Bones Malone, you kidding me?
Oh, come on.
And
Ex-trombone player.
So in short, they said, hey, can you come back and do it next week? I just figured, hey, they probably just, whoever was supposed to do next week probably had to cancel or something happened. So I said, okay. So I did one more week. And now I'm starting to think, man, now this is kind of weird because they haven't said anything, but they said, well, can you do one more week? I thought, well, this is kind of strange because based on what I was told, this is not normal. So I got into the second day of my third week, and then I got called into Paul's office afterwards. I thought, well, this is where they say, well, it's been fun having you, but see ya.
Good luck.
And so Paul said,
turn in your sound book.
You dig? So take your playbook to the coach. Yeah, you're out of here. Pink slip in your locker. And so Paul said, we want to offer you the job. Do you want it? And I jokingly said, I got to call my wife and ask her if it's okay. Which is another joke we have to this day. But and so I laughed and I said, sure. And he says, well, so check this out. So I was on the band about 10 days after that. And he said, you know what? I never actually bothered to ask Mr. Letterman if it was cool to hire you. And so I was like, okay, so now I'm definitely fired, because, he came back about 10 minutes later. He goes, okay, you're hired. Yeah. And so, wow. I see Mr. Letterman quite often too. And I get to joke with him about that. So it was great. It was a great 3 years of time on that band before Dave decided to grow his beard and do his Netflix show.
Yeah. It was very cool getting to see somebody I knew on that band. So I was like, I know that.
That guy owes me $10.
We've had coffees together.
We'll have more coffees.
Wow. All right. And so that was till 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. Yeah, but okay. I see those guys a lot, so I feel like we're still doing the show in many ways.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you're still doing gigs with Paul.
Yeah, I just
Schaefer.
saw Paul 2 nights ago.
Yeah, exactly.
With Nicole Kidman.
Name drop. Let's go.
Let's drop all the names. Pow, 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 pow.
No, let's go.
New York City name dropping. Wow. So that takes us to the book and ends this episode of The Art of Music
I
Tech.
have to leave already?
Oh no, you're staying. We're gonna have a second part to this. Yes, we're gonna dry out the skateboard and make sure the wheels are nice and even for you. It was a little rain earlier. We're gonna, it's gonna keep it dry in New Jersey.
Get a couple icebreakers.
But
Icebreakers, those are good, right?
yes, thank you so much, Frank, and thank you for staying for another second half. Wow, that's a lot of great knowledge in this half. Just his background and just swinging from one swinging band to another.
Hey, I'll take it. It's been fun. I'll take it.
Wow, and now he's written a book on how you can do that kind of stuff as well, and the right approaches, and he's already mentioned it in the stories he's told us. So we'll button down a little bit more, hatchet down a little bit more on that, and tamp it up. We're going to get into that as well. So thank you again for listening to The Art of Music Tech. Please share, comment on iTunes, get us further up the chain.
Be nice to us, please.
Yes, please be nice. We're sharing some insane knowledge that, come on. Frank Greene, let's go.
We all need.
Exactly. You can check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Check us out at 23dbproductions.com. And please stay for the next episode. And let's go.
Let's go.
For more information of booking 23db Productions, visit their website at 23dbproductions.com. Like and follow 23db Productions at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for the latest work.